Is Call of Duty dying? You don't need to look too far to find this phrase or a variation of this said. Whether it's in a Reddit thread, Twitter post, TikTok, or YouTube comment, it's a phrase that seems to be repeated hundreds of times by hundreds of people. Now, is it true? Now, first things first, you would think that answering this question would be as easy as looking at the current player count and comparing it to the old player count. But for reasons that I don't know, the live player count that you enjoyed seeing on games like Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops has been removed. Probably has something to do with the fact that the player count took a crazy nosedive later on, but I digress. So without that information, we'll have to answer this question with some research. Now, to get the ball rolling, we have to go all the way back to 2003, the year that the title Call of Duty was released. Call of Duty made its initial release on PC in 2003 and would be first seen on console in 2005. Even with it initially being released on PC, Call of Duty was able to sell 790,000 copies in the US by 2006. The game had sold 4.5 million copies by 2013. Call of Duty also received critical acclaim, many Game of the Years, and countless awards. This would be the beginning of one of the biggest AAA titles in history. Following Call of Duty, Infinity Ward would develop their next title, Call of Duty 2, this time with an almost immediate release to Xbox after its PC release. Call of Duty 2 was just as popular, if not more popular, than its original counterpart. But even this early on, there was a problem in the way these games were being made. The problem was that these two games were very similar. Now, this isn't only a Call of Duty thing. Madden, 2K, and countless other games do this as well. But this is where one of the biggest complaints for Call of Duty was born. Call of Duty 2 would follow the same format as its predecessor. The campaign was separated into 3 parts, same as the first. Soviet, British, and American, also same as the first. While campaign, storyline, and gameplay were very important to games' success at the time, multiplayer was what was growing and more exciting. At this stage in Call of Duty's life, their multiplayer was similar to other multiplayers and contained respawning in certain game modes, different game modes, a variety of different maps, a selection of different weapons, and fast gameplay. This was basic for any FPS multiplayer game and still is until this day. After Call of Duty 2 came Call of Duty 3. Shocking. Unlike Call of Duty 2 and 1 though, that were developed by Infinity Ward, Call of Duty 3 was developed by Treyarch. This is the beginning of the development cycle that Infinity Ward and Treyarch have been in. With all the success that Activision was having with Call of Duty, Activision was able to bring in another studio to develop COD. Oh, why do you ask? Well, if you take a close look at the year 2004, oddly enough, no Call of Duty came out that year. So if we do a little bit of deductive reasoning and use our powers of assumption, we can surmise that Infinity Ward was only able to develop a game every 2 years, leaving a whole year for Activision to be making no money. Enter Treyarch. Treyarch would be able to develop and release a game on the year that Infinity Ward could not, i.e. more money for Activision. Now, I'm not saying this is morally wrong or right, I'm just giving the reason, but I would like to point out how fast it took Activision to notice they were leaving money on the table. Kind of impressive, not gonna lie. So Treyarch has released Call of Duty 3, and yeah, you can pretty much expect to play a Call of Duty game at this point. This game was like Call of Duty 2 was to Call of Duty 1. Very similar. These are not inherently bad things. This can be backed up by the fact that it sold 7.2 million copies, making it their highest sold game at the time. Again, Call of Duty would win multiple awards and received generally positive reviews, except for on the Wii, but who's really playing COD on the Wii, right? While Treyarch gave us the Call of Duty we all expected, Infinity Ward gave us a game that changed everything. Call of Duty Modern Warfare. COD 4 would be the first game to develop using the IW3 engine, a huge upgrade from its predecessor, the IW2. With its upgrade, we saw bullet penetration, improved AI, lighting engine upgrades, particle system enhancements, ragdoll physics integrated into character death animations, self-shadowed every frame. And if you thought some graphical upgrades were the only thing Infinity Ward was bringing to this game, you're fucking wrong. This game would be the first Call of Duty to break away from the World War II setting, thank God, taking place in 2011, in a war that seems to resemble our current struggles. On top of a completely new setting, Infinity Ward would bring in 3 systems that are so integral to Call of Duty today. If they didn't have them, could you even call them a Call of Duty game? I'm talking about the Prestige system, Kill Streak system, and Perk system. So Prestige was to give up all your levels and unlocks. In return, you would be reset to level 1, but would receive some sort of token, i.e. banner, calling card, emblem, or prestige points for other unlock, letting other people know that you have prestige, depending on the game, of course. Only if you have reached max level though. Kill streaks were granted to players who were able to achieve 3, 5, and/or 7 kills without dying in a single match, and you would receive a UAV, airstrike, and/or attack helicopter respectively. And finally, the perk system. Like many you have seen today, you are allowed to choose 3 perks for each of your classes. These perks perks would give you an extra edge during the match. Example, C4 times 2 would give you 2 C4s, UAV jammer would jam UAVs, etc. Now, with what you would call fundamental aspects of a Call of Duty game, Call of Duty 4 was ready to take the franchise into what many would call the golden era of Call of Duty. Call of Duty 4 would go on to sell 15.7 million copies. Call of Duty World at War would sell another 15.7 million copies. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 would sell 25.02 million copies. And if you're asking, whoa, why the big spike? Well, to keep it short, Modern Warfare 2 had a lot of things going for it. On top of it being the best Call of Duty game ever made, it also, like Modern Warfare, depicted conflicts that resembled our current struggles, and with this came controversy.
A popular new video game actually allows you to be a terrorist and kill people. Take a look.
Modern Warfare 2 would make headlines for its controversial in-game mission. Players would play as an undercover spy tasked with taking out Makarov, the big bad at the time. During this undercover mission, Makarov and his team would rip through an airport filled with civilians with various medium and light machine weaponry. This mission is famously called No Russian because Makarov tells the team not to speak Russian, so you will not be giving up the team's identity. This one mission would be the focus of many news articles written at the time. And you know the saying, all publicity is good publicity. Even though parents in the news were telling kids that this game was making them violent, I heard it too. Sales for Modern Warfare 2 were higher than ever before. It's also important to note that a few months after the release of Modern Warfare 2, two of Infinity Ward's lead devs, Jason West and Vincent Pala, were escorted out of the building after being fired for breaching their contract. After this, Call of Duty Black Ops would sell 30.72 million copies. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 would sell 30.71 million copies. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 would sell 31 million copies. And then Call of Duty Ghosts would be the first game in 3 years to not see the 30 million mark and instead sell a close 28.9 million copies. COD fans nowadays might be impartial or even say that they enjoyed Call of Duty Ghosts, but that was not the sentiment back then. The previously mentioned problem was now much bigger. It was a sentiment that was quietly growing throughout the years and seems to be too big to ignore at this point. After Call of Duty Ghosts would come Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, the first Call of Duty to not be developed by Infinity Ward or Treyarch. Because the community had kept asking for something different, Activision delivered. Activision had now brought in Sledgehammer Games, now making it a 3-year development cycle. This was different. Sledgehammer Games then added a new mechanic to the game in the form of jetpacks, also different. Whether it was good, it's up to you to decide. But I'm not gonna lie, I had fun with Advanced Warfare. Not my favorite, but honestly probably one of the best Sledgehammer installments. Not enough to bring Call of Duty to their former prestige, but still good. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare would sell 21.76 million copies. Nothing to scoff at, but it wasn't the numbers they were used to. Their next game, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, would be another jetpack game and would sell 26.72 million copies. This would break the downward trend that Call of Duty was on. Black Ops 3 was a good game. It even introduced something new in the form of specialists, a system that you could basically choose a character with certain abilities, kind of like the Apex Legends, just less powers. But if it wasn't for the Black Ops title, I don't think it would have sold as much. After this title, players were completely over jetpack Call of Duty games. Players wanted to return to boots on the ground, so what did Infinity Ward make them? Another jetpack game. Okay, so you see, because Call of Duty was now in a 3-year dev cycle, by the time the player base started to really hate jetpacks, i.e. Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare had already been in development for at least a year and a half. Infinity Ward would remaster COD 4 to be sold with Infinite Warfare. This was done because Activision knew the game wasn't going to sell, or that was a narrative at the time. This would result in one of the lowest sales a Call of Duty game would receive in recent time. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare would sell 13.6 million copies, and this trend would not stop even with Sledgehammer trying to bring Call of Duty back to its roots with Call of Duty World War II. COD World War II would sell 19.82 million copies. Treyarch would follow it up with Black Ops 4 selling a staggering 14.3 million copies. Black Ops title couldn't save it this time. This would be the darkest time for Call of Duty, but while Call of Duty was in its darkest time, other games and genres were really shining. This would be around the time that games like PUBG and Fortnite would make the now oversaturated market of battle royales so popular. Sadly, I wasn't a part of the gaming community at the time. COD World War II left such a bad taste, I decided to sell my Xbox and games, but the effects of Fortnite's popularity can still be felt till today. So much so that Call of Duty would try their own version of a battle royale, Blackout. Blackout was a battle royale. It had the basic Call of Duty feel that you were used to with some Black Ops 4 pizzazz with the usual BR spin. Although on paper, Blackout should have done just as well as the other BRs, the one biggest problem with Blackout was that it was stuck behind a paywall. That's right, unlike other free battle royales, to play Blackout, you would first have to purchase Call of Duty Black Ops 4 for $60, and then you were able to play Blackout, or you could play Fortnite or PUBG for free. So you can see why it didn't perform as well, but they were on the right track. After Black Ops 4, it was obvious that Call of Duty needed something new, or something old. It was Infinity Ward's year to release a game, and did they? Call of Duty Modern Warfare would release in 2019, selling a whopping 30 million copies. On top of reintroducing a title that the fanbase already loved, it was released on the new IWA engine, which introduced spectral rendering, improved lighting, and ray tracing. I'm sure you guys all love that. DLSS wasn't added until later, but still something to note. Call of Duty Modern Warfare was by far the best looking Call of Duty to date. Still is. But how did it play? Well, it depends on who you ask. Players like me who returned to COD or new players really enjoyed it, but players who had been playing for a few years had a different take. It was generally well received. The developers had some weird ideas like no minimap and no ninja perk or the absurd camping spots, but the weirdest that every decent player was complaining about was skill-based matchmaking. Skill-based matchmaking is the process of finding equally skilled players for you to play against. This prevents new players from being stomped on and keeps better players engaged. That's the idea, but in practice, every player who knew what up from down was now forced to play at their very best every game, which can be kind of annoying when you just want to have fun, or so I've heard.
I can't fucking compete!
But even though this seemed to make players see red, all Activision was seeing was green. They finally brought the franchise back, and guess what was right around the corner to make their pockets even deeper? Warzone. Warzone was everything Blackout was, but better. It brought in new features to the Battle Royale scene like loadouts, the gulag, and even bringing teammates back after their death. This became so popular that other Battle Royales decided to adopt this into their own game with their own versions to keep players in the game longer. But you know what the smartest thing they did was? Make their game free. That's right, they learned their lesson from Blackout and made the game free. Now, because Warzone was tied to Modern Warfare, the game was on the same client, engine, and it even shared stat progression, which was a big W for them because it made people have to buy Call of Duty Modern Warfare to more efficiently level the guns in Warzone. You can level your guns without paying the $60, but it's going to take a lot longer. Warzone would garner over 100 million downloads, and Activision has confirmed that Warzone has passed over 125 million collective players since the game's launch. After this, Black Ops Cold War would release, again selling another 30 million copies, and then Call of Duty Vanguard, with Warzone tying these all together. This just means that the leveling and progression could be tracked across all 4 games, and Warzone being the place where you could use weapons from the other 3 titles. Now, after the release of Black Ops Cold War is when things start to not look so good again. Even though Treyarch released what most would call an unfinished game, the game still did well, probably because of the previous title. When Vanguard was getting released, it was painfully obvious that nobody wanted a World War II game. Couple that with the mess that Black Ops Cold War was, it's not a surprise that till this day we do not have the sales numbers for Call of Duty Vanguard. All we have are some annual reports made for investors. Activision had this to say: while Call of Duty remains one of the most successful entertainment franchises of all time, our 2021 premium release didn't meet our expectations. We believe primarily due to our own execution, the game's World War II setting didn't resonate with some of our community, and we didn't deliver as much innovation in the premium game as we would have liked. It was also reported that the Vanguard year-on-year sale was down 40% in the UK compared to the previous title. Even with these previous statements, Call of Duty Vanguard was still the best-selling game that year, according to multiple news articles. From what I could gather by comparing Activision's 2022 second quarterly report and their 2021 second quarterly report, it seems they made what they're supposed to make. Now, do take into consideration that Activision owns multiple game titles, meaning that these reports show numbers for money made and lost on all Activision properties, i.e. World of Warcraft, Crash Bandicoot, etc. But this leads me to believe that Vanguard sold nowhere less than 20 million. This is the lowest I believe it sold, putting it right above World War II. Now, to answer the question, is Call of Duty dying? To put it simply, no, not even close. Call of Duty has been a best-selling game every year since its original release, and with Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2 right around the corner, and the acquisition of Activision by Xbox, it doesn't look like Call of Duty is going anywhere. But why do you keep hearing Call of Duty is dying? Well, it's because there are a lot less players, but not because it's dying, but because it's not popular at the time. Every few years will come a game that breaks boundaries and will reach millions of people who don't normally play. It happened in the previously mentioned golden era of COD. It happened with Fortnite. It happened again with Call of Duty and Warzone, and it's going to happen again in the future. It may feel like a game is near its death once that shine wears off, where the millions of casual players leave, but there's always millions of not so casual players that stay. At the end of the day, video games are a hobby to most. Some people take their hobby more seriously, and some people even turn it into jobs, or trying to. So hit that like button and sub, and I'll catch you next one.